In this video, we come to the most complex part of the tutorial, and it is the unwrapping of this component. We could take some time to make a procedural medal, but I would like to show you how to unwrap something and the process of doing it. By the way, we're just going to apply a shiny metal material to that thing there. Easy. Not shiny metal, we'll apply the pommel metal. That way we'll give it a little bit of some detail on top, some little smudgies. So in here, we're going to switch into UV editing. Okay, and currently I still have those things selected from when I was editing it last time. And that's kind of good because I want to have these things selected. But I don't need to worry about them now. Actually, yeah, we don't need to worry about them. We're going to unwrap them separately. No, actually, we want to have these separately. So we're going to do what is called mark some seams. I'm going to Control E and I'm going to mark these seams. Now, just to demonstrate what this does, I'll unmark those seams and show you. It's Control E, by the way. Clear seams there and mark seams. I'll just unwrap this whole thing. By default, it's kind of taken on a life of its own when we've unwrapped it from a cube before. It's not good, by the way. This is not great. We could make this a lot better. Just the main reasons why this is not good, for example, is that this face here, if we click it here, that is what it looks like over here. So any texture that we put on here is going to be mapped to this, but it's going to be stretched out. So we need to get all of this here to be roughly the same size as it is over here. Now this one's okay, and these are okay, but these bits along here are not okay. They're just not okay. If I hit N, I just want to make sure, if I go to, oops, I want to be in object mode. Item, these should be 111. Yep, so that's good. Location doesn't matter. That doesn't matter if it's 000. That's the location in the world space. If it was 000, it would be down here instead of on top of the hammer. So I'm going to just go ahead and mark these seams around here and show you. Oops, I'll just once again. I'm going to select everything and hit U unwrap. Okay, that is for some reason the default unwrap that it wants to go to, which I guess is okay, but we don't actually want that, and I'm not sure why it hasn't. If I just reset this and then click unwrap, it does not want to unwrap, which is fine because I'm going to manually do it anyway. I'm not sure why. It normally turns into a big mess. So let's select these and I'm going to mark them as seams. Now you see here, this one's kind of not in proportion, or neither is that one with the others, and they're all kind of different shapes, even though they're all exactly the same shape on the model. So texture is not going to be applied to it evenly. But we're going to hit Control E and mark a seam. Now when we hit U, select everything and unwrap, there we go, that went munted. But all of these down the bottom stayed the same, because the seams, what it does is it tells the computer where to cut these shapes, where to cut them up. So from there, we're going to go ahead, and I just need to quickly double check my reference from earlier to see how I actually cut this up. Because I took a while to cut this before, and I don't want to go and do it all again. So I just want to check and see where my seams are on this one. Let me bring it up over here, and I'll go UV editing. Okay, looks like I did it pretty straightforward. Cool. All right. This may not be the best way, but I went ahead and marked both of these edges. You'll see it can't figure out how to unwrap them over there. Control E, mark seam. And then I just picked one of the edges along the bottom here. Now we're going to do some texture painting, and this will be okay because we're going to use this area as the texture paint part. I'm going to select edge mode, select this here and here. Control E Mark C. Now if I select everything now and hit U, it's actually managed to unwrap things fairly neatly. It's actually not too bad, it's pretty good. If I click unwrap, I might click change this. It says angle base, that's not what I want, that's kind of too stretched out. But if I change it to conformal, it seems to work a lot better. These fill holes, except for this one down here, everything looks like it's pretty good there. And what I could do is I can manually move these around. So I could just go over here, hit B, G, move that up and kind of position it there. That's not great, so we could probably add a few more seams over here. Essentially what we're doing is cutting this out to lay it out on a flat surface and then be able to draw things on it, which the computer will then take those things that we draw on it and wrap it back around this model here. I might add another seam just along the bottom here. Control E, Mark C, and then unwrap. That's worked a bit better. So I'm not too worried about this because it's not going to be like a perfectly straight texture. We're going to paint on it with a metal, and you will need a seamless metal texture for the next part as well. I've actually provided those. They will be on the classroom, so you can download those and you can join in with that. So this is unwrapped. What I'm going to do next is switch over to texture paint. And once again, I'm going to isolate. I won't isolate this bit, but I am going to work in preview mode. So we've got that other stuff down the bottom there, which is looking really nice. And we're going to make a new texture to paint on. So this texture, we're going to make a little bit bigger than that, 2048 by 2048. And the color will just be black. And I'm going to call it Hammer Head. And click OK. We'll zoom out a little bit on that. Now, over here, if I start painting on this, oops, I've got that weird Verona texture still enabled, which I don't actually want. But it doesn't show up on here anywhere. Okay, in order to get it to show up on there, I need to go to my materials panel, add a new material. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it, I'll call it rough metal this time. And down here for the base color, I'm going to click on image texture and change it to Hammer Head. Now you can see it started to map some of that stuff onto these areas. So that square bit, we've got that bit going up there and it's on those there. Now this is really ugly over here. We're not going to paint onto this area. It's easier to paint onto here. So we can paint directly onto it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new material. A new texture. I'll get rid of that one. Click new, and I'm going to image or movie. I'm going to open a texture. Now the texture that I want to use here is called Metal Steel Battered 1K Albedo TIF. Now I did say to convert these to JPG, but in this case it doesn't matter because we're only using it as a texture to paint with. We're not actually using the texture. So now I can paint directly onto this, and I want to paint from an angle. You'll see why. If I do this, it all looks pretty good. If I start kind of painting like this here, you think, oh, that looks nice. And then I go and zoom in on it, and it's all stretched out along the top. So I want to use these different angles here to paint onto. Also, make sure your strength is at 1 at the top. If it's less than that, you'll have to do kind of multiple runs. So I'll kind of switch around here. And it might seem like it's lagging out. And that is fine. Now don't worry about these bits in here because we're going to actually replace those later with something else. Look at the top down. Look at it from the bottom and paint that. Don't worry, you're not going to end up painting over any of the other things there. And I think I've hit all the edges. So now if I look at that, that's pretty good. Okay, so what I actually want to do now is go ahead and make some materials. I'm just going to bring this one over here so I can reference the material I did last time. Shading, and I'll just pick up the, give me a sec, head, cube. Oh, I didn't quite finish this model, by the way. I might do that afterwards. So there was an extra detail here that I was going to add that I never ended up actually adding. So I will do that, but not right now. We'll add it at the end. It should be okay to add at the end, I think, because it's only going to be a minor detail. So looking at this here, let's go ahead and add some shading to it. So we've got the texture, so that's good. We've got the texture, and we're going to switch over to the shading panel now. And for this one was rough metal, and this image is going into the base color. Okay, so that image is going into the base color there. Now we're going to grab those texture coordinates. Oops, add node texture coordinate. Grab that. We're not going to put that into here, and I'll tell you why. Because if we do that, we are overriding the UVs that we unwrapped before. Okay, I mean, we could do that, but it's exactly the same as what's already there. So we don't need to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our a different texture. It's going to be a noise texture. Just noise. And we're going to take the object and pop that in there, and then we're going to take this here and pump it into the roughness. Okay, now if we look at that, it looks pretty ugly, but you can see that there's some metallic bits on there. We can play around with the scale here. I think in mine I've got the scale set to 1.5 or so, and the detail I've got that set quite high. Distortion. If you turn it up, you can get that kind of almost like a Damascus steel effect. I think that's the term, and someone was trying to do that in class the other day. If I look up Damascus steel, there are plenty of ways that you could get this kind of effect in using procedural textures, but I am creating this, which doesn't have that, so I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so I might just leave the distortion a little bit like that. That's okay. And I am going to add in a bump map to this as well. So add search bump down here. And I'm going to take this noise texture, put the color into the height, and then that into the normal. I'm actually not entirely sure what that, oh, that looks awful. Wow. Let's turn that strength down quite a lot. Okay. We can play around with that a little bit. I'm going to turn the metallicness of this pretty much all the way up. And this roughness part, I actually really don't like that bump. I might do something with that bump later, but I'm going to turn that off for now and just disconnect that from there. That looked really bad. Okay, so the roughness, we want to get some of this noise texture, but in order to get it reflecting, we would need to make it, probably pump it through one of those color ramps again. So if I add in, ramp, color ramp, I'll pop that here, and there we go. So if I turn that black part up, you can see that there's a lot more reflection on it. It's actually looking more like some metal. Now we can use a whole lot of these things. So if we go texture, I'm not going to use a Voronoi texture. It's tempting, but there are other things here that I can use. There's the Musgrave texture, magic texture. I don't know what that does. There's a bunch of other textures here that I could use, wave texture and so on. I'm actually going to see what this does. So I'm going to throw that in there, pop that into there, put the color into the metallic component of it, and then I get galvanized steel, which Thor's hammer is not made out of galvanized steel, so I won't use that. But I could turn the scaling right up on it. I could play around with this stuff, turn it to smooth, and turn the scale right up, and maybe I'll pump that into the color ramp as well. I can combine multiple inputs and turn that down, maybe bring the white this way. No, that looks pretty bad. I don't want to do that. I could do that though. So there's a lot of different things that I can play around with here, and I am just playing at the moment. There's no correct way to really do this part. I will turn that up there. I really don't like that going into the color bit here. I don't know what happens if I put it into normal. Probably nothing, because that's not a normal map. It just makes it look hideous. Get that out of there. Get that out of there. Okay, and then we're back to the metal part, but I'm going to bring that back down to there, and that part down to there, and then we've got a decent metal texture. It's not great, but it's okay. Now, I did say I was going to do something with this here, which I will do. This video is now 16 minutes long, so I'm going to do that in the next video.